it's Shireen Vishmaya on the full moon lunar eclipse in Capricorn, and I'm coming to you from New York City. Yeah, from my bed, because that's probably where we should all be. I haven't wanted to leave my bed in the last few hours. The eclipse actually just passed, and I couldn't make a video to save my life over the last 24 hours. It's just been like complete compression and this like bearing down weight. I've said, like, it's just been such a really I mean, not only is it like almost 100 degrees in New York City, but the energy of this eclipse building up, you may have felt, as the moon was applying to Saturn over the last 24 hours, has just been complete overwhelm. And Saturn is lead, so if you felt like old, lead in your bones, exhaustion beyond measure, just bone level, what's a word beyond exhaustion, whatever the next level of exhaustion is, that place, that's probably where you've been. That's where a lot of people have been, that I know and that I've been speaking with. And so it's just a time where I feel like we've got to be really gentle with ourselves, take it easy. I mean, even though the eclipse just passed, we're still going to be feeling the reverb of it, the reverberations over the next couple of days, and we're going to feel like we want to integrate and process. Capricorn, which is where the eclipse full moon was, is a sign of integration, and it's a sign of structural integration. So it's not just integrating it in theory, it's actually putting it into your, not only your life, but into your physical body, like into the material realm, because Capricorn is so much about the material world. And yes, those of you who are working with me in this P7 know this, we're calling this sympathy for the devil, because it's really about embracing our inner demons and not being afraid to face our fears, our insecurities, our doubts, things that create self-doubt, because often we're on this path like the Capricorn, we're like the goat trying to climb up the hill towards our goal and our mission, and then what gets in the way? Often it's those inner demon voices that tell you you're not good enough, there's too many other people doing what you do, how can you trust this path, what if you don't make any money at this path, what if, and it can be a lot of negativity that we buy into in that moment, which are lies, and it's really just fear speaking. So this is a time to eclipse all of that. This is a time to eclipse our fears and to really look at how we can deepen our relationship to that which supports and sustains and nurtures and helps us to grow on a level of integrity, which means putting in the work step by step. It's not about skipping steps, because that's a big Saturn and Capricorn lesson. If you try to be like, well, I want to be here because I want to make this money and I see these people are doing this thing, or that looks really good, but you haven't actually put the time and effort and practice in, Saturn will come down on you, because Capricorn's all about time, and it takes time for mastery, and this is a sign of mastery. We just had the new Moon Solar Eclipse in Cancer on July 2nd, and that was really testing our emotional mastery, our nostalgia, our connection to the past, our connection to our mothers. And Capricorn is the opposite polarity, and now we're looking at, and don't get me wrong, I'm going to come back to Cancer because we're still right in the thick of all of those Cancerian energies with Venus and Rahu now neck and neck in Cancer. So that energy is being amplified on the other side, and it's kind of the balance point, the counterpoint to this Capricorn energy, which is asking us, okay, so now we're dealing with boundaries, structure, what we want to say no to, where have we gone too far, like where have we overindulged emotionally, how have we lost track of our discipline. This is also Guru Purnima, and it's the night of the Guru. It was actually, you know, my Guru Amma, they actually celebrated it last night, and sad to say I was supposed to be there, and I actually my trip got eclipsed, literally eclipsed. And the irony is that I had just been saying that when I was really tuning into the message of this eclipse, I said, this was from the blackout just a couple nights ago in New York, I said, this eclipse really feels like the show has been canceled, go home, no dice, give it up. And that's what happened to me at the airport. They were basically like, your trip's not happening because you don't have a passport. And I even called before I went to the airport just to double check and said, I have a passport card. Is that enough, for flying into Canada? And they said, yeah, no problem, Delta. And then I got to the airport and the woman's like, no, that's only for land travel. And I'm like, well, obviously Delta knows I'm flying. And I told them, I need this for flying. And I thought I had my other passport as a backup because I normally always carry it. But of course, the one time I don't have it. This is the, eclipse. So there's some lesson in this. My trip got completely eclipsed. And at first, I felt really disappointed and defeated. And, the mind goes into all those, like, this is where the inner demons come in, like, I'm being punished, or there's like, why is this happening to me? Like, I can't go. And also it made me realize that we're so used to, in this day and age, not having limitations, because Capricorn and Saturn are a sign. Capricorn's a sign of limitations and Saturn is a planet of limitations. So we're so used to just finding our way around obstacles, like there's an app for that. I can just do this thing. I can just maneuver that thing and I can still get what I want. And I realized in that moment there was a real limitation of time and space, because unless I wanted to spend an exorbitant amount of money to reroute my ticket to go all the way back to San Francisco, which would be like a 6-hour trip, and then all the way back here, or from San Francisco all the way back across the country to Toronto, it would have been expensive and time consuming and exhausting. And I could have done it, but the question was like, at what cost, and it just, especially under a Capricorn full moon eclipse, I'm not going to like just throw away, the ticket price was insane for me to do it, on top of the time and energy, and then hauling my dog back and forth across the country. I shouldn't haul my dog that much traveling, or myself. So I was like, I had to make the call of like, you have to just give it up. Then I thought, well, maybe I can jump on a train and get there, because that could be a way around it, because I can use my passport card for that. But there were obstacles with the train, and it's like a 12-hour trip. And by the time I got there, I couldn't make Guru Purnima, was the end of the story, and by the time I got there, I'd missed half the retreat. So the whole thing was just telling me, give it up. So that's Capricorn, that's Saturn, that's the, not always that you should give up, but sometimes it's about honoring your limitations. Sometimes it's about taking those limitations and obstacles and pushing through. So I was really sitting with, well, what's the right thing to do? Because often I'm the type that I will push through any obstacle. I don't give up easily. I'm a Mars-driven gal, so I don't like the word no. I'm always like, well, then let me find a way around that. I don't take no easily, or what's the expression? I don't take no for an answer often. If I feel like if there's a will, there's a way. Maybe that's a better way to say it. I shouldn't say I respect people's boundaries, but it's more like if there's a will, there's a way. I'll try to find a way to do it. So, but in this case, if I used my discernment, that would not have been a wise choice, because by the time I got there, God only knows, right? There was some reason I was being blocked. The reason could be just that I was being taught, like, you need to triple check everything because it's Mercury retrograde, and you should have not just gone by the one Delta agent. You should have done your own research in Google to make sure you could take your passport card and really think ahead, because Saturn is also about planning and thinking of the practical things. So, and when Mercury's retrograde, we tend to lose touch with the aspect of details, can fall through the cracks. So anyway, this is all to illustrate that during this eclipse, you may have felt something has been eclipsed from you. The show has been canceled. All bets are off, like I said. So this is an important time right now to look at, where limitations serve us and where they hinder us, and where we can grow from them, and where we need to respect our limits and realize sometimes limitations teach us grace, because once there's a restriction, this is the beauty of Saturn, for instance, and this could also be, of course, just the mind trying to rationalize. Once we can't have something, we often you'll notice the mind try to come up with all the reasons why it was better anyway, which is difficult when you're disappointed, to try to find reasons why it's better that I couldn't go to Toronto. But I realized, all right, I do have to focus on the bright side. So I was thinking, well, what it did show me is, like, you are exhausted and tired of traveling, so it's one less plane ride for you, although that wasn't a very long one, so that didn't really create much solace. And I thought, well, you can focus on what I've been saying a lot. I rely a lot on spending, because I'm blessed that I get to spend a lot of time with my guru, so I rely on the time I'm spending with her to really get into my spiritual practices, or to, if I've fallen off on something, to like double down when I'm with her. But then often I'll go out again and forget. So I thought, well, maybe this is a teaching that I can't just rely on the next time I'm going to see her to kind of get back full force. Like, how can I sustain this even in her absence, her physical absence? How can I sustain that relationship? So I was forced to do that in a way last night that was pretty powerful, where I had to do everything. It showed me how I could do this all the time, which I don't. You know, like, I mean, I always have her photos nearby. I sit at my altar, you know. I definitely speak to her in my head all the time, and I chant my mantra just as like a background constantly. It's always going on. That's a gift. But I realized, like, the devotional aspect, which is something that comes up during Guru Purnima, I could do that every day. I should have that level of longing every day. Last night I had such a deep, intense longing. It was painful. It brought tears to my eyes, and it went on for hours, and it was really painful. I couldn't sleep, and so I was just watching videos of Amma, vintage videos, and watching videos of her swamis giving talks to try to pretend I was at Guru Purnima in a way, or trying to recreate it the best I could to feel her presence. And then even watching a movie about her, just anything I could. And it was like the pain of that, which I realized if I had been with her in person, I don't even know if I would have experienced that level of longing. Maybe I would have, maybe it would have been more, but sometimes the absence does create the, or they say the absence makes the heart grow fonder, because we often take things for granted. I just wrote a whole thing last night for P7, and I posted it on Instagram if you follow me there, about not taking things for granted. I talked about that this morning, that it's so easy to take things for granted that are in front of us all the time, that we see all the time. And even relationships, like I took for granted, like I could have another chance to see her on this tour, because I had seen her many stops, but I didn't full out do the program, because I kept thinking, well, I'm going to catch up the next time. I'll do more the next time. And I thought, well, I'm going to go to that last retreat in Toronto. So I didn't make the most of those other visits I had with her, because I kept waiting for the future. And I thought that's such a powerful lesson. Like, don't wait for the next time, because it might not happen. In this case, you just don't know when it's going to get eclipsed, you know, when you're done and when the show's been canceled and you can't go. And if you're waiting for that time for your best moment, or, you know, to really like have the full experience, you know, or to give it everything you've got, why would we do that? Like, why do we put it off? Why are we putting off anything? Because we just don't know that we're going to have it next time, right? And that I was grateful for that lesson. That was my big Capricorn eclipse message and lesson, because Saturn is the planet, again, ruling Capricorn at this eclipse, and this full moon was very close to Saturn and Pluto in Capricorn. So that theme, Saturn is the lord of time. So that theme about time and our relationship to time and taking things for granted and not putting things off for the future is huge right now. And how can we really honor the fact that there is a limited amount of time? This is the other thing. I mean, we don't know how much longer we're going to have anyone we love in our life, you know? Like, a relationship can die the next minute. Why do we take anyone for granted? A person can die, a pet can die, you could have a breakup, someone could just move that you're attached to, they could get, you know, their job could relocate them across the country. Who knows how the show can be canceled, you know, or how things can change. The light keeps going off on my computer. So we want to step back and reflect and really consider how we can live in the now. I mean, all spiritual teachers try to impart this. They really try to get this through our, you know, our very thick and resistant skulls, that it's about living in the moment, living moment to moment, and being present, and not waiting for the future, and not dwelling in the past. And that's easier said than done, to say the least, but it is worth practicing. And I feel like this eclipse, by canceling the show, is forcing you, okay, now how do you adjust to this thing? Is you can't have access to this thing that you thought you were going to have to keep you in that kind of distracted onto the next thing. But what happens when the lights go off and that's it? It's just you, and you realize how vulnerable and powerless we are. Another version of that is, you know, if somebody gets sick, like, or there's an accident. Like, I had a terrible experience the other day where my dog, he's a Capricorn, so he's being very affected by this eclipse, went running head first, so fast, full speed, into a door, a wooden door. I don't know how he didn't see it wasn't like a glass door that looks like you could run through it, but I don't know what was happening with him, but he just literally, you know, slammed his head, the front of his head, into this wooden door, and then was walking for like a couple hours, like all you know, not a couple hours, but it felt like a couple hours it was traumatic for me, long enough that I was, you know, very stressed out and I had to take him to the emergency. So anyway, it's that vulnerability. He's okay, by the way, thank God. Very resilient pug. And then I had this experience on Friday night where I was just having a wonderful meal, celebrating my friend's birthdays, 2 of them cancers, and almost started choking to death. Like, it's never happened to me, like, I mean, I've almost choked on, like, sometimes taking vitamins or something, you know, where you're like, it gets stuck or something. But this was more terrifying because I was like swallowing, and when the food got stuck, I couldn't breathe. And then I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna have to do the Heimlich maneuver. And that moment too made me realize how vulnerable we are. I was fine again, but just that moment of like the airflow being blocked off was so terrifying, because you really are like confronted with death. And I feel all of these things are just a reminder. It's Saturn's reminder of how vulnerable we are, and how, in some ways, why we need to be so humble, because all of this can be taken from us at any moment. We cannot take anything for granted. So that's the big eclipse, full moon, lunar eclipse message. Take nothing for granted and have deep, deep reverence for time. So anyway, thank you so much for watching, and maybe I'll come back with a retrograde, a video on Mercury retrograde in Venus and Cancer with Rahu, which is also happening right now. But first things first, Capricorn first. Okay, so I hope you're all having a healing internal time to get the deeper messages of this eclipse.